Welcome to Brick by Brick, a podcast produced by Move Your Mind, committed to changing the construction industry, one conversation at a time. I just want to say a huge thank you again for listening to the Brick by Brick podcast. It's a podcast that we simply couldn't continue doing without the support of Lendlease and many involved in the construction industry. As we've stated many times on this podcast, it's an industry that's been underserviced when it comes to mental health. With one suicide happening every 2 days, these conversations are critical. It's been a really amazing experience to see all of the positive feedback that's come out of running this podcast. There's been many discussion points open up by having these conversations, and we've been able to connect with people all over the world in the industry. What we've learned is that people want to talk about this stuff. They just often don't know where to begin, or they don't have that resource. By creating these conversations, we provide a safe space for people to reach out. In today's episode, we're going to share a few snippets from a range of the interviews that we've conducted for the Brick by Brick podcast. Thank you again for listening in each week, and I hope you enjoy. Burnout is across the board such a huge topic. Is that something that, I guess, in the construction industry, but more broadly as well, that you've seen and are seeing as being a big issue that we need to try and look further into?
Yeah, Nick, it's a massive issue, across the board, not only in, working in the construction industry, but just people in general. The not understanding the stresses, not understanding how to deal with the stresses in our life, our lifestyle choices, the impact that lack of sleep has on that, the lack of time to do the things we enjoy, which are really critical to, our mental health, our physical health as well, not eating well. There's just the demands of our life are huge, and throw in COVID, throw in inflation, throw in interest rates, throw in everything that's coming to us, in Australia, floods and all this sort of stuff that's coming. It's a very difficult time. And I think, the more we can have these discussions around burnout, around stress and managing our stress, the better people will be firstly aware that these things are actually normal, that if we don't actually action these things, that they will come and bite us, but it's okay to put your hand up. And that's probably, I think the biggest change that we're seeing at the moment, through COVID. One of the great things was a lot more connectivity with people having conversations about mental health and burnout, and that's definitely one of the huge things that we're dealing with every day in society.
Lendlease is proudly sponsoring the Brick by Brick podcast. They're committed to the health and safety of their people and those they work with, and have been acknowledged externally for their focus on providing healthy workplaces. Lendlease is certified as a globally healthy workplace in recognition of their focus on employee health and wellbeing. In addition, Lendlease won the Multinational Employer category at the 6th Global Healthy Workplace Awards. They have a holistic approach to health and wellbeing and continue to grow their focus around mental health. Lendlease genuinely care and are out there not just to make a difference in their organisation, but in construction and society as a whole. We're very proud to have Lendlease as a sponsor of the Brick by Brick podcast. In that industry, I guess construction, mining, a lot of it's male dominated, a lot of it traditionally blue collar. They probably haven't had the facility or the culture to talk about mental health, their feelings. These things get swept under the rug. Have you seen it as being and currently being a big issue? And is it something that you're seeing improve at the moment? What more can we do to sort of make a change in that industry?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a question that could take 5 podcasts too. And I've got to say, one of the most exciting things for me is when I go out onto a mine site to work with a construction company, to see young 25-year-old women being an integral part of the construction crew. And I just think, wow, the world's in an exciting place. But, I've done work in companies and some of them construction companies that are brutal, like that there is safety is something that they have to tick boxes on, and that's about it. There's really not a lot of care. It's a bit of an attitude of, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Now, I'm not going to name names of companies, but I've also worked with some unbelievably brilliant companies that have got a level of care that would bring your mum to tears, you know. Companies like Fulton Hogan, Acciona, which, you know, started out with a bit of a tough reputation coming from Spain into Australia. The people that are running safety in those companies are incredible, you know. Lendlease, John Holland, you know, what Martin Smith and his team are doing at John Holland is unbelievable, like really going beyond the reach. Then companies like Mervac, they've got some incredible safety people, you know, who are just doing everything they can to try to support their people to go home safe, but also to go home happy, you know. Then you've got smaller construction companies like BMD, the Build Group, Winslow Constructions, Primero Constructions in WA. Man, these are great companies, you know, that they're just run by really, really good, responsible people, you know, mostly men, but not always men, who just are doing everything they can to try to, and their biggest challenge is that they want to do more, but their project managers are resisting giving them time because of project timelines and those sorts of things. But I think, you know, there's a couple of things with the construction industry. It's very competitive. The tendering is really intense. Then you've got politicians putting pressure on to get projects completed because they want them to showcase them during election campaigns, those sorts of things. So there's lots of pressures put on projects that perhaps don't need to be there. But, you know, having said that, you know, most of the people that I meet in that industry, they've just got good hearts and they want to do everything they can to, you know, to send people home uninjured and happy.
Absolutely. We, Nick, have a long way to go. But I absolutely think that there's been a real shift. And the shift has been mostly around just the awareness. We're talking about it a lot more. Government is talking about it a lot more, state and federal. You know, there's funding available. EAPs, employee assistance programs, are really bolstering the work that they're doing, you know, the work that you're doing. And I guess when people like yourself, you know, are vulnerable in the public space, and, you know, being brave about calling it out, but at the same time, educating, I guess, the masses of the fact that there are avenues for support and avenues within professional bodies. So, you know, I've just talked about some of the resources that we've got, the resources that you've got through your hub. I think there's certainly been a shift. You know, we still have a long way to go, but if we don't start the conversation, if we don't have those meaningful conversations, then I think, you know, we're not going to achieve anything. So yeah, to your question, I think certainly there's movement, but where we now need to do is consolidate a lot of the noise that's happening and start to kind of work through, you know, really tangible, meaningful ways to address this issue.
Thank you so much for listening to the Brick by Brick podcast.